First off, I'd like to start off and apologize. I forgot to show you how I set my jig up, why I changed the design of it quite a bit, and how it works. So first, let's take a look at the jig, and I'll show you what I did, and then I'll show you why I changed the design, and then I'll show you how it actually works. So the first thing is, I started out with a curved design in the beginning, and it kind of looks like a smiley face. Funny. Okay, anyway, a curved design in the beginning, and I decided to change it around quite a bit. So I went out with this type of design right here. I came in with a small angle, flat across, and out with another small angle. Now the reason I did that is because if we look right here on the Molly frame, because I couldn't figure out why I wasn't getting a good fit. Because with the curved design, it really wasn't hugging my back the way I wanted it to. It's actually kind of pinching in a little bit. And I got to thinking, you know, studying the Molly frame, I noticed that right here is it comes in at a slight angle, flattens out, and then comes in at another slight angle right here. So after putting this up to my back again, I came to the conclusion I'm going to go ahead and go off this design here because the curve wasn't working at all. Now, it took me a while to get this jig set up, probably about an hour, and I'll show you exactly what I did. Is I put a bunch of nails right here on the very first prototype, and it was working actually out quite well. When I put this down in there, actually where these pegs are, there was nails, and the problem was it was pinching the PCV pipe right there and putting a stress crack in there. Not really a crack, but an indent. And a little bit later on down the road, I guarantee that will break from stress. So then I put two nails in there, and that's this one. Nope, that's the good one. And it was doing the same thing. It was still making the same indentation in there. So I started digging through the toolbox, and I found these are actually hole punches, or punches for putting in grommets. And I put those in there, and after, let me figure out which is the best one. I think it's this one here. After putting that in there, let's try this one. That's it. I noticed that it wasn't bending as bad and a smaller curve on it, and the really good thing about this is the heat would transfer off to the metal and it cooled down a lot faster. Now another thing that is really good about the jig is it makes each one of these tubes uniform. That way I don't have to really do that much measuring. I do the initial measurement, which turned out to be 1 foot, which works perfectly. And that way they're all even. Now when I put them on the frame I made, I'm still going to have to trim a little bit off here and a little bit off here because they're not going to be perfect, but that's not a big deal with the PCV pipe. So let me show you how the jig works. It's really simple. The first thing we need to do is we've got our pipe that is trimmed down to 1 inch. And if you noticed, on either one of the sides I put a little bit of a black mark here, a black mark there to line our pipe up with. The second thing I did is I marked right where I want to bend, there and there, so you can see right in between where the bend's going to be. That's where we're going to concentrate all our heat on. And of course I came over here and copied this on the other side, lining our marks up. The second thing is I'm going to take the heat gun, and I'm going to run this in real time, so it's going to take a couple minutes. We're going to start concentrating the heat right here on this bend. Now, the way you know that it's actually getting too hot is you see the little brown mark it's starting to make there in the pipe. We are starting to overheat it. Now we're simply going to put it in there and bend it around and put this bolt in, which is going to hold it in place. Now if you look, you notice how it's starting to crumple up right there. The next thing we need to do, and that's why I don't cool it down very rapidly, that gives you time to actually maneuver it and line it up. And another thing I did over here, let's pull this out a bit, is I put a mark right there where the end of the pipe should actually end up, so we can maneuver it over to that mark. Then I'm simply just going to hold down on this for a little bit until it starts to cool down. That way it will take the crease out as much as possible. The neat thing is the heat, like I said, is being transferred over to this aluminum stamp, and it doesn't take as long to cool down as you think it would. Now, we're cool to the touch. If we look, we don't have that massive crease in there like before. And if you wanted to, actually you could heat it up a little bit more and kind of pop that out. But I think that's going to be perfect. Now for this side here, you see that you got your mark here. And then now to this bent, we just want to make sure that it's perfectly lined up. We got your mark over here. So we're going to duplicate the same process as what we did on this side over here. We're going to pull it out, and once again I'm running in real time. I'm going to go ahead and heat this up for our next bend. Now that we got it in there, I'm simply just going to bend it over till it reaches that mark there, and simply drop our bolt in. And just like we did on the other side, I'm going to push down on it until it's actually cooled off. That way, by pushing down, it's going to crimp that in and push it out a little bit more against the stamp or the end of the jig. Now while I'm pushing that down, I'm also pushing this side down to make sure it is flat and hasn't moved. So it's still hot and it's still very pliable. That's why I'm not rapidly cooling it down. It gives me time to actually mold the PCV pipe into the shape I want it to mold into. And I think pretty close. Let's pull it out of the jig and see how we did. Still warm. It came out really well. Get it back in there. And if you look, these are the ones, this is one of the test ones. I think this is the one I made with the new jig setup. They're pretty much perfectly, well, it's not going to be perfect, but pretty much lined up, the same angle, the same degree, and the same distance in between the two bends. So, the other thing I did real quick, just to see how well I made the angle, I grabbed the molly frame again, and just simply compared it to the angle of the molly frame to make sure I got it right. And I used the top one, not the bottom one. The bottom one is a lot more progressive. The top one's a little bit not as. So I put it in and I compared it to the actual bend in the frame, the curve it's got in there, and it matched up really well, a lot better than I thought. And it worked out on both sides. That way I was able to get all the bends pretty much the same on my PCV pack. As you can see, they're all pretty much lined up. But you're still going to have to do a little bit of trimming because it's not going to be perfect. So that's how I set my jig up. I kind of wanted to show you that and just make it a lot easier for you to build a PCV backpack frame. And so, as simple as jig as ever, I just put nails, used a couple of bolts, and then the dies for my grommet kit. And you don't have to necessarily use dies, but whatever it is, it has to be real big and rounded. That way it doesn't pinch the PCV pipe any. Okay, so that's been a look at the jig. Comments are welcome if you can see an easier way or a better way to set up a jig, or any ideas at all, because I'm kind of experimenting in new territory. I really would appreciate them. And I want to introduce you to a new family member, new member of the crew I just recently picked up from an emergency adoption shelter. Let me go grab him real quick. He's down there chewing on the table leg. Here, buddy. This here is our new friend Scout. He's a new member of the family. Just picked him up. He's a lab male, and he is smelling real good because he just took a bath a couple minutes ago. We gave him a bath, and he is roughly about 2.5 months old. So that Scout who really doesn't like being on the table. But like always, thanks for watching. We'll see you.